not for my mother, I wouldn't survive. And I can say, if not for me, she would not survive, because we were in a situations that without having each other, there would be no point of living and no point of fighting for survival. I know I came down with first my mother. She was one of the first one to contract typhus. And before this, I want to tell you, right beginning in 41, in 44, end of 43, were taken to Auschwitz. Beginning January 44, they put the whole camp on an appel. You'll probably by now know what is appel, like in the army. Everybody has to report, and they were counting the heads. And according to the list, as you came in, you were tattooed by numbers, and your age was given, which I didn't have any problem with my age, but my mother was alert enough. She gave her age like 10 years younger at that time, which this saved her, because they didn't even look at the people. They just called out the names, whoever was over 35, and it was right away taken away. And many thousands of people were women, healthy, and just that was the way of little by little liquidating the Jewish population in the camps too. So knowing what's going on, I didn't realize what my mother did, that she gave her age being younger. I was petrified. I said, Mama, that's it. I am going with you. If they will call you, I don't want to leave. So she said to me, if they call only after 35, they won't call me, because I gave my age much younger. And I saw she was not called. So this was the first major story which they started to liquidate the Jewish population in the camps. Why they didn't the job right away? Because basically we didn't do any constructive work so far I can recall, except when they had collected the clothes or whatever the Jewish families brought from all over Europe. They were told they are going to different places to resettlement program. So whatever they asked them to take jewelry with them. They asked them to take all the good possessions. And people did it because they were looking for hopes. They not going to be just a goat for a settlement. And I used to work in a place, they call it Neistube, which was a sewing barrack, and all the good stuff what was taken away from the Jewish people, from the women. We had the women department. We didn't have anything to do with the men's clothes. And were just looked over. What was in a very good condition was put aside. The Germans took, wrapped it, cleaned it, whatever they did, sent to Germany, to the Germans. And the rest either was discarded, I really don't know, because or was reused, which was not good enough for the Germans, were reused for the people, for the inmates in camp. So we didn't wear any striped clothes because we were not allowed outside the camp anyway. So whatever was not usable, if I was size 8 or 10, I was wearing a size 16 clothes. You know, it was like as you come, you got you. Oh, excuse me. You got you bundle clothes, and that's what you had to wear.
Don't let those stay on top of their way.
Yeah.
Separate them. So the pictures separate
Yeah.
so with the silver
Oh,
and the
yeah.
still stick together.
Okay. I think they should try this.
So what was interesting,
The radiator.
which it helped me a lot to being. I'm still on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. being with my mother and help to keep her in a sort of more tranquil or more less stressful situation. I was knitting. As I told you, I learned the art of knitting. I was knitting beautifully. So they asked me on few occasions to knit for before Christmas or for whatever, for the German SS woman. She came in, and most of the time what I did, I was given a ball of wools to unwind, because Jewish people, they had a different way of hiding. They were brought from Europe. They put a piece of jewelry or gold coin or something given away to a child. Take it with you, and you should know inside there is a piece of jewelry in case you can help yourself or whatever, to buy you way out from somewhere. And the Germans, they found out this, and they had a crew of people which were sitting and unwinding the wool, and there was like few people sitting, and one was from the office, and we had to unwind and see if there's being that I was knitting, you know, I was getting already this wool already after the past the control, which was done before it came the wool to my place of work. So my mother couldn't do much. First of all, she didn't see at that time well. She didn't have her glasses, and the only way I could do, I was knitting, and she was holding the wool for me, or just winding the wool, or whatever I gave her, you know. And she was, why I'm mentioning it is, she was the first one to contract typhoid. The epidemic broke out in the camp, and that time it was not recognized yet. I don't know how it happened. The epidemic started. Suddenly one day she woke up, and her eyes were like very glassy, and she couldn't see through. She couldn't hold the needle. She couldn't eat. She couldn't do, and I didn't know what to do. I was lucky. The working table was sitting. I had my friends that I went to school with them, or people they knew me from hometown, and they knew my mother well, and she was one of the lucky mothers that survived the ordeal. So we decided, as long as the SS German woman, they call it the Aufseher, she was the overseer. Every commando had the German overseer that she came in for inspection. So we used to put her under the table and cover her up with cloth, you know, the cloth we are mending to cover her with. We knew something is coming. We usually got a notice 5-10 minutes ago to straighten out the place or whatever. We just took her out and put her sitting next to me. I gave her a needle or whatever, a piece of cloth. She was sitting there, and we, you know, to pass. And then later on, we put her back, and that's how she went through being sick. And I attended her with what I could, you know, walking with her and holding her by the uphill in the morning, in the evening, twice a day. We had to stay for counting. And one day I was noticed with her because she couldn't match the step of the group going out from the working place to the appel, and she was an inmate too, but I would put her on an equal level with a German. She was a terrible woman. She saw me walking with my mother, you know, left behind. She couldn't keep the step up, and she came over, and she didn't speak to her. She said to me, what do you think you're going to? To a wedding or to a... Don't you know where you are? I said to her, sorry, I know very well. And I remembered that my mother had a big blue spot on her knee going up and down the bunk, which she had to climb, and she hurt her knee. So I just pulled up her skirt, and I said to her, you know, Miss Oberkommandin or whatever, You see, she hurt this morning her knee, and she saw the blue spot. She said, and she has difficulty to walking, but I'm going back, and I put some cold compress. She'll be much better this evening. She looked at me, she didn't say, and she let us go. And then I was very careful with her. I never tried to stay the last one. I always start in the middle, and I asked my friends just to walk a little slower, that we could keep up the pace. And then it didn't take long. I contracted typhoid, and with me, a person which doesn't experience the sickness, it's very hard to explain because it was very remote. You heard about something epidemic in the Middle Ages, but in a normal time, typhoid, I mean, we didn't know what's about. But people are losing memories. The temperature is very high, and the first thing you're getting a very white tongue, and that's the way. How did I found out? That's the first way when the epidemic broke out, when we were taken, and the only way we were taken for selection, which means they segregated the people, the healthy one from the sick one, by looking if there's no bodily damage or sores, or the latest was it, which nobody realized, they ask you to show your tongue. And that time we realized that the white tongue says it all. When you have a typhoid, a white tongue, people don't eat for days or for weeks, and whoever made it, I have to say, if not for my mother, I wouldn't make it. I had experience with her. She was one of the first one. I know what's about. I knew how she acted, and I recognized the sign of the sickness on me right away. And my mother came out of it. She was very weak. The first time she asked for a piece of bread, I knew that she's over it. Then I stopped eating. And with me, it was a different problem. Because when I got it, it was a full winter. It was very cold. And we were taken on many occasions to, they call the bathhouse, which they call sauna. And we had to leave the clothes behind outdoors, and we went in naked. Can you imagine 1,000 women going into one place? And the clothes were left outside, and they call it Entlausung, you know, because when there was the typhoid epidemic, you don't know, you learn about those things. It's a tragic way of learning those things, but I learned as maybe older people, they had more knowledge about different sicknesses. We are a very healthy family, and the kids were very strong, all of us from my family. They were going with disinfectant, and the clothes were left in mud outside. When we got back, it was not a clean bundle. First of all, you never got your own clothes, you have a bundle. Whatever you could grab, you got it. And everything was with mud. So you had to go wintertime. You couldn't just go freely to wash the clothes or to wash yourself or to relieve yourself. You have everything was going in groups or going with somebody and going with... So one night, you see, I tried to bring out the highlights in my life that left such an imprint on me. Whenever I look back, I always go back to the same visual memory that, you know, it's. I believe it will escort me through my life. There was an evening, after the evening appel, they asked us to leave the clothes outside. They took us to the bathhouse. They call it, we had a shower once a month or whatever, but this was installed to get yourself clean. They ask of you to be clean, but you were not free to go and have a shower whenever you want, but whenever they felt like. It was a winter night, which in Poland are very cold winter nights. And me and my mother found ourselves standing in front of the window without a window pane, just open. And the snow was blowing in. And we're standing back to back, rubbing ourselves, keeping ourselves warm. And I said to my mother, you know what, I don't know if it's worthwhile for what we are fighting. You don't know what happened to the rest of the family. You don't know. You see what happens to us Jews. Because other nationalities were saved in a different way. They were getting parcels from home, food parcels, and they were not guessed. They were always spared when they called for selection for people. They always called the Jewish. We were marked with a different numbers and with different signs. So I said to my mother, and probably at that time I had already the sickness in, because normally it was against my nature, especially to talk to my mother, to take away the little hope she had for other surviving children, to just to break the hope in her. And I said to my mother, I cannot take it anymore. And I said, you see the lights. It was evening that we started the ordeal around. The lights went on automatically probably, or they started when the minute, it started to the end date, the day end, it started to get a little dark. You had the whole camp was with lights, the electric lights, and if you came close, like let's say 10 feet, the electric current pulled you in. And in the morning you found many people just glued to the barbed wire. One day I got up and I said to my mother, you know what? Yesterday I saw there is such a warmth by the fence. There were so many lights, must be very warm. I am shivering, I am so cold. Please let me go there. My mother said that I am on a road to be very sick, and she was holding back my hand. And then when we were standing that evening at the appel, she was holding me with her both hands, because I said, let go of me. That's the place I am going. I am so cold, I want to have a little warmth. So that was my objective. I focus on, and knowing, that's why I say, because of her, knowing now that if she wouldn't hold back that time, I would do it, because I was not responsible. In my normal state of mind, I was too optimistic, and I felt in my, let's fight it, let's see how far I can get through it. But when you're sick, and God knows, that was the first sign, the very high temperature, God knows how high I was, and I was left with my mother. And a cold night, winter night, barefoot, naked, standing. They put some disinfection on us, and we waited, I don't know for what. The next morning, we were let out naked. It was January or February or March. This is those months, they don't mean anything, because the winter there goes even through April in Poland. We found a pile of clothes, like intentionally dipped in the mud. And 1,000 women are going after the clothes. At that time, nobody cared about fashion or about sizes. We just grabbed whatever we could. No shoes, no underwear, just to cover yourself up. Whatever we got, we got. And later on, if you wanted something, there was like an inside trade. If you gave up you bread, somebody who work in a place that work with clothes, after the appel you can go in a special little place that you exchange. You gave away your poor ration for 24 hours, you got yourself a decent dress, So that's what we did. There many times I I did need for 24, and then I took a break. I ate my portion, and then I did it again. I didn't want my mother should be deprived of the food. I felt I am younger, I could take it more. So I provided for shoes, and I provided for her a warm sweater or underwear. And I was on a fast again. I have to give away my portion of soup or portion bread that we got once in 24 hours. And then I came after this sickness. I was not over it. I broke up with sores on my whole body, which this was a very common thing in camp. Firstly, I don't know if somebody mentioned to you, the first thing we came to Auschwitz, or we were given, special to the women camps, they said, the inmates, the old inmates, that they put brom in the soups. We should not menstruate, because women, I didn't menstruate for 2 years being in camp. We felt it something. There was always a very strong substance in the soup. And then, for living in condition like this, taken away from a normal, even a little bit less than normal during the ghetto time, but being in camp, living on a very small portion of bread with a very thin sliced margarine for 24 hours, with a little soup without any substance in it. Either was cooked with leaves picked up by the inmates somewhere, or on occasion you could find a piece of potato swimming around. That was our way of eating there, and that was it for 24 hours. And being very young and strong and deprived of the basic normal food, we said not a basic, but something, I start to break out, and I start to get sores and full of pus. Why I'm mentioning to you? Because I don't know if not my will to life, people didn't survive with it. Even after the liberation, I was marked like after leprosy. I still had open wounds in my body. I had it under my arms, which I couldn't work. I had full blown up places full of pus, which it was dripping, absolutely dripping. I had swollen legs. That winter time, I put pair of stockings. I couldn't take them off till maybe 3 months later, and it was sticking, the pus. Everything was glued into my legs. In a condition like this, we were one day taken to out of camp, which was very unusual, out of camp for work. And as I went to the appel in the morning, and I was told that we are going out to work, there was no way I could make it. So I said to my mother, I don't know what shall I do. How about leaving me in the black? So she said to me, if I will leave you here, I don't know if I come back, I will find you, because whoever left during the day was not able to work. The German did something, but the rest, there were orders in camp. Like every oldest from the block, the manager of the block, they used to call capos, they had to report how many people they have left behind, which are not able to work. So one day, I went to work. The type of work we did, which I did with my mother, we had to carry a very, very big stones. I don't know how it can carry. It was not by helped by little, how you call it, willpowers or whatever, absolutely nothing. We had to carry 2 people, 6 people. They didn't care. One day we had to take from this point to bring like 100 feet away, and the next morning I found myself starting from the other point, bringing back to this. It meant that it's only just to finish us off, and I couldn't figure out for them why do they have to do it this way. They had more simple ways. After I came back, after this day, I knew that I couldn't survive another day like this. Because seeing me, I could see myself. We didn't have any mirror, but I remember vividly how I looked. I was walking like a mummy, with my mummies tied like this. I couldn't even keep my hands close to my body. I had to go like this. My legs were swollen. I couldn't stay. I couldn't do anything. And if not for my mother, I will say again, I just would give up at this point. I couldn't make it. The next day, we had to go out, and I said to my the couple of the block, which she was in charge and responsible for the maintenance of the block and from order. Let's put it this way, that everybody be counted for and the ration were given away out. So I said to her, I'm going to stay in. I cannot make it. And this is the same woman that she helped me take my mother to my block. And she said to me, listen, take my advice. Go out. Try not to do anything, if you can, and don't stay in. Because if you're staying in, I cannot be responsible what can happen next. Your mother will come, and she might not find you. That's what she told me. And she probably, at that point, triggered off the right feeling in me, because for anything, I would want to see my mother being left alone. I felt that I have to take care of her. So I remember my mother and somebody else, one of my friends, were helping me, holding me. I was holding on to them, and we walked out. I went through agonies that day. I couldn't make it. Matter of fact, it probably had to be very bad, because the next day I didn't march out with them. I was left on the bunk. And it was around noontime probably. Here I see a German SS woman walking in and taking account how many people, and she calls the block Älteste. How shall I address her? I don't know even there's a translation in English for her. In charge, the person in charge of the block, they called him Capo, the supervisor. And she called her and said, how she used in God's name you left this Muslim there. People, they were close to being dead, or they looked like they are going to see the other world very shortly. They were being called Muslims. You know, this expression by the Arabs are using it. Somebody who's very skinny or hungry or sick, the Muslim. So she said at that point to her, you know, she's my cousin. She didn't feel today well. And I left her just to rest the day. So she asked her, is she really your cousin? She says, yes. And that was it. It was just a miracle, because my aunt was taken away in this fashion. She remained 1 day behind. She couldn't make it to work. I came back. I didn't see her anymore. So then she came to me and she said, you know how lucky you are. And it was a miracle that she stood up for me like this, because usually they didn't do it. And it's, I believe, there's something what I should mention, what comes very many times to my mind. When I was down with the typhus, and this condition came after my typhus, you know, those sores on my body. This woman that was in charge of the block came once to me and she asked me, she needs something to be knitted for. She wants a pair of gloves or something for herself. She gave me the wool and she said, I know that you knit nicely, because I used to work in the place that her mother was the a person in charge of the working place. So she said, my mother told me that you knit beautifully and I would like if you be able to do it. I would say, I will try. This is the first time I made a pair of gloves with 5 fingers. I knew how to make it with 1 finger. I did it for my sisters or brothers, you know, my siblings. But so I took advice from somebody else and I did it. She was very happy. And one came, it was when I started to get sick. And in the evening she asked me, can you finish? Bring it down to my, they had a little room, which they were more privileged, you know, the little room with 2 beds and a little stove. And she was sitting and eating a bowl of soup. And as she was eating the soup, she just took the bowl with a spoon and she gave it to me. He said, I'm sure you're hungry. And this was for me, you know, like a dream, just something to dream about this. And instead of accepting it, I started to cry. I said, why are you crying? So I said, what do you think? That I am a beggar woman? If you want to give me, why don't you give me a plate with the clean spoon? So I realized that probably I was with high temperature because people were eating. I was able to eat out of the floor of garbage can, you know. And here she gives me a clean plate of soup with a spoon. So they look at each other. They said, show me your tongue. And I show her that time the tongue. She saw the white tongue. So they understood that I am sick. But she said to me at that time, I could see that you have a fine upbringing. She was a very fine person, a fine upbringing. And she didn't say anything to me. She walked over to the stove and she took a cup, she put soup, she gave me a spoon, and she said to me, eat. So I didn't want to eat, probably I couldn't. She called my mother down. My mother came and she said, make your daughter eat, she's not well. So I said to her, can I take the soup to my bunk, which I was with 8 other women? And she said, okay, take it. And I took it. So I couldn't swallow a spoon because this was the first sign that I'm really down with typhus. And I asked my mother to eat, and I asked to share with the rest of the girls on the bunk. That's what I did. The next evening, she sent up a woman. I mean, one of the, they call it the Stubenälteste. They were the people that were keeping clean the barracks. You know, they were sweeping after we marched out to work, after we made the beds. They walk around and see if the German inspection comes, everything should be neat, German style. Everything with precision, killing, keeping clean, finishing of people, everything with precision. This woman, she was a Polish woman. She came up with a big bowl of steaming soup and she hands over to me. I couldn't eat. I said to my mother, eat with the girls. So they all shared. It went on for quite maybe a week, every night. In the morning, when before, you know, people marched out, she grabbed my arm and she took me in. She gave me a little coffee to drink and a slice of bread. And I was still refusing. So since I worked across the barrack that I was living, she was sending over for me there. I couldn't eat, I gave it to my mother. One day, she asked me to eat, and I started to eat. And I knew that I'm recovering. But before this, what I want, when she kept me back on the block, it came to a point that I start to swell. And this was the first sign of not getting better, but getting to the other world. And being that she was a medical student, the supervisor of the block, she said to my mother, your daughter is in very bad shape because I see the swelling. He said, you were like injected with water, and your body was blowing up, and especially under your eyes, you got very puffy. You saw like blown up. Sometimes you inject in a certain balloon or something, you put the water and spray. That's such a baggy eyes. So she said, I don't like how she looks. And it was at the same night that I said to my mother, you know, I don't think I will make it. I started to see the other world, all the nice things that I left behind, dreaming about family. You know, it was just, this world didn't exist anymore for me. And I recall this so vividly. And we were 10 women on one bank. I am mingling in, but I just want, when I make the statement about being myself, just like on the end of my road, the circumstances I was living or sleeping, or that was my life. 10 women and one bank.
Meaning on one bed?
And one bed. There was no single beds in Auschwitz, except for those people that were in charge of the barrack. They had little, they had 2, 3 to a room, 1 room or 2 rooms. They had 2 little rooms in the entrance. But the rest of them were 1,000 women. There were 8 or 10. And I was with those young women, my age, on one bank, and my mother was with me. When one wanted to turn, we had all to turn, you know, and one blanket. And for a pillow, you used your shoes or your dress, which one day I found myself getting up, not having my shoes, not having my dress, and I didn't have anything to put on to go out to the appel outside. You know, out of necessity, people were stealing and exchanging for bread. And at this point, maybe being sick or whatever, instead of putting to the safer side, I put it at the more vulnerable side, my clothes, which I didn't realize till the next morning that I don't have anything to wear. So I took the blanket and wrapped myself up. You couldn't stay back. You had to be counted. And you couldn't go in a blanket because you could just put you away for 10 days to a, they called it Strafkommando, which was like a bunker to punishment for a week or so. Anyway, so it started again. I had to fast another 24 hours till I asked my mother to go and exchange the bread for a dress. She brought it, I could wear it in the evening. But at that point, when I started to swell, she came and she said to my mother, I believe she wouldn't make it till the next day. So suddenly, I see everybody was sleeping. My mother is sitting next to me, holding my hands. And she starts to pray. She's a very religious woman and a great believer in God. She was praying. I said, Ma, what you doing? What you doing? She said, listen, I want you to survive. You have to fight. You have to hang on. You're the only one from my 8 children which you survived. We didn't know who survived at that point. And if I will lose you, I won't survive. I will go with you wherever they will take you. I will not make it. And you know, the way she spoke to me, the way she was praying in Jewish, and I was listening. So probably my mind was have gone to the other world. You see, this is the story why I am bringing it up, and I want, if my children will ever see the tape, they should understand. Mother's prayers that time did something to me, which I was the rebellious type at home, you know, being brought up in a very Orthodox home. I didn't comply to all the regulation in the house. I was more progressed. I felt it's not for me. Anyway, how much they tried, they couldn't succeed. Not because I was a bad child, but I had my own mind, let's put it this way. I just wanted my own way. The only prayer I knew by heart, which was before I go to sleep. And after my mother spoke to me, she didn't appeal to me I should survive. She appealed to me she wouldn't survive if I will be gone. And I said, I cannot let happen. I had to be alive to help her to get through this, what I am doing to her. And I didn't know anything. The little prayer I knew, which my parents made me do it before I went to sleep, I was going over and over again this little prayer. Praying, let me survive, let me be well, I cannot go away now to leave my mother. Let me help her to just like this. And I felt it. There was probably the night that was the crisis and my sickness, my whole well-being, because the night before I was told I wouldn't make it. I knew, I was aware what she was saying, that I wouldn't be able to make it. The next morning I got up. I felt wonderful. I felt like to live again, like to fight again, like to stay alive. When the woman came to take account, because she counted me out already, she knew I couldn't make it to work. She said if she made it tonight, she told this to my mother. She spoke either German, because she was from Czechoslovakia, or Polish, you know, Slavic languages are similar. So, and I overheard this. If she made it this night, she's going to make it, and I will help her. She said it to my mother. And she was not an angel. You know, she was very bad to other people. I don't know. Maybe the story with the soup came to her heart, something triggered off some decency, that they are still decent people, you know, that not everybody is just animal and treated like animal. From this day on, every night, she was sending food up for me. When I went once without having breakfast by her, she came after me to work, which was across the road, and she said, what happened? Why didn't you stop for your coffee, a slice of bread? I said, today I enjoyed the ration I got from like everybody else gets it. So it means that I am well enough, I don't need it, thank you very much. And this, she liked it even more. So she always kept track of me, how I am doing, and helped me in a certain way to get along better, to push in a little food and I try to reciprocate in a different way. I was very talented of creating things, on sewing up or making over clothes. And I was doing for her the little things. It was appreciated both ways. This incident left a very big imprint on me in my life, in a present life. Not being such a great believer, I have to tell this in front of the cameras, which I gave my children a traditional home and religious education and belief in God. Because I felt, if not the little belief in God I had at that time, and the power which kept me going, and the little prayer, I wished at that time I was more obedient. I would learn more of prayers to say thank you to God or in a religious way. Let's put it in my own language. I did it, and I promised myself, if I ever survive, if I ever be lucky enough to have a family, the first thing what I will give them, just a belief in God, in something higher, and something in a time of distress to hold on to it, which helped me a great deal. And I remember when my kids were very small, I made sure that they wouldn't go to sleep without a night prayer. And they were too young to understand this, and they were maybe sometimes puzzled why Mommy is pressing on us to make the prayer, because it was not a simple prayer. It was just a prayer of my survivors. And I felt maybe it's a code of protection for the future of life, which not always parents can just create for the children, a perfect life or an ideal life, or be sheltered from stress or distress or events that is beyond our controls. So I wanted to make sure that they have a rope to hold on the way I did in times that I needed it so badly. And I believe it was a crucial time. If not for the little prayers which my mother made at that night, and my prayers to hold on, to get over, it was a crisis in my life. And I lived up to my promises at that time to all of them. The minute the kids got bigger, they marched every Saturday to the temple. I sent them to Hebrew school. I didn't want just to bring them up in a sheltered life, just to go to specific religious school. I want them to grow up free, not without hang-ups. I don't know. Hopefully I made a good job. They grow up to be two beautiful people. I mean, except two beautiful girls, physically, two beautiful people, working for people, and with compassion, with big, great hearts, and I am very proud of them. So it was very hard. Then you see, we are on the subject being in Birkenau. I just went away on the sidetrack with this incident, which it's very important, was very important in my life. But being for 2 years in Auschwitz, in Birkenau rather, it's very hard in such a short time to give you a picture what was going on. It was a fight for life from hour to hour. And for me it was harder from the perspective, the way I was placed in a black, which I mentioned to you over our telephone conversation. Coincidentally, I was in a black that was across the crematorium, which many nights I didn't sleep because the cries of the children of the people being sent, people they realized, special people of Polish, living in Poland, Polish Jews, they realize where they are going, you know. But the screams, and later on, the terrible quietness, were confined at this point to the blacks, were not allowed to go, because over the fence you could see the movement, what was going on there, so close were, I don't know, maybe 100 feet away. I was surprised at the time that they did it, having the inmates on one side of the fence and the crematorium of the, but to them it was a natural way, because they figure out our end will be the same. So There was no movement going in and going out that should be afraid that the news would spread. Anyway, and after the terrible quietness, at night specifically, in the beginning, the flames from the chimneys, no matter how many times I try to say to myself, maybe this is still a bakery, maybe still is a factory, maybe this is still this and this. No matter what, if the next day you see the empty barracks or the scattered dolls or scattered shoes or scattered wood on the road or the path leading to the crematorium, and the whole night I was sleeping in the reflection on the flames from the chimney. My bunk was constantly in flames. So it was like a curse on me. Not enough that I saw, I heard, I started to realize I had to, I knew getting so, not hard. I cannot say hard, because I am very sensitive to people suffering. I thought after this ordeal I went through, I be a very hard like a rock. I am so sensitive. I cannot see a beggar on the street. I cannot see a homeless person. I cannot see a starving person. I cannot see a person with suffering. You know, I am so sensitive to those situations. And this is something that till now I cannot comprehend how those things go together. Being exposed at my age and those horrors, how, maybe that's the way I could keep my sanity and just pick up and start to build a new life in a normal way and bring up normal, hopefully, that my children were not affected growing up in my house, because me and my husband are both survivors, which makes very, very tough on children, very tough, which I tried over the years not to talk about this. And this is the first time I really talk about this. It took me 43 years, exactly 43 years.
What changed? What was it that brought you to be able to talk
What
about?
changed? I will tell you. I have a grandson now, which I love very dearly. I have 5 grandchildren, two granddaughters and 3 grandsons. But the oldest one is the first one. You see, firstly, you have to understand, after the ordeal I went through, if I lost 2 children before I saw the 3rd one alive after the war. If I had this one, and then my other daughter was born in the United States. The other one was born in Germany, which is still today ashamed to say that she's born in Germany. They thought she's a German woman. She said, I'm German, but I'm Jewish. And then when I saw my first grandson, I saw like a continuation of life. That's something that Hitler could not defeat. I feel like a victor in some way, that I had in the short years that I was put through so much suffering, that I could emerge and lead a normal life. And my life, I think it's quite normal. I try to keep it very tranquil. But at many times I just ask myself, if in the process of bringing up my children, we didn't do some harm to them, because they were surrounded, my whole family, they are lucky enough to have grandparents, aunts and uncles surviving the horror, which other children, they are not lucky to have. But growing up, it was very tough for them. So, but the way they turned out, I am very proud, very, very proud. And having my grandson, you ask me, I just went away from the question, why now? He's a boy of 14 now, and he's going to a yeshiva, which it's in the 5 towns, Lawrence, which those children are made aware about what happened to the European journey, and he's very much interested. He's very young. On many occasions he asked me if he can come in, or I should come in to his classroom and talk about this. I don't think that I could do it, not especially not when one of my immediate family is sitting next to me. I would crack up. It's much easier to talk about when you have people that we just got to know each other, and knowing that he wants to know very much. He's a very compassionate child and very sensitive child, very much interested what happened and what happened to the rest of the family. And I found myself shying away from his questions and from answers to being I was invited twice by principals to go to high schools or to go to have a little questions and answers. Emotionally, I was not ready. I didn't know how I'll make it now out with you. But so far, I don't think, maybe I will pass the grade, hopefully. But I found it, having the telephone conversation with you, it's a very good idea. I open up and I spoke very freely about my past. And I believe it's time that I own it to my children and to my family, to my grandchildren especially. They don't know what happened, that they should know firsthand. And I don't think I could make it with them. Even if he will be 2 or 3 years older, I don't know I could tell the way I could tell now, and hopefully in the future they will look at the videotape and they will identify me with those stories, which I believe will give them certain values in life and certain outlook. Because suffering makes some people very bitter and very, very resentful to another human being, which I encountered, my immediate family too. With me, I love life and I love people. I cannot do any ill to anybody, except I don't know if I would be given the freedom to get to have my revenge for those people I lost and they were killed by the Germans. I believe I could do something, as good a person I am, just to justify, or just that they outcry, or the life of my brother, of my grandma, of my brothers and sisters should be revenge. How could you revenge if you're a normal human being? How could you do it? Go and kill? It doesn't make you better than the other killer if you go and kill, but they deserve it. They deserve it. I always wish, I was telling you, I know I'm in front of camera, I can repeat it this 1,000 times. I only pray, maybe God will listen to me, that should come a curse, first on the Germans and second on the Polacks, for all the ills they did it, because people cannot comprehend what happened to the Jewish nation. How they did it in such a vicious, such a way that I have a basic education. I know Jewish history well, and I know history of the world, let's say basic. I don't know, going through ages, even in the ancient time, that was such a mass killing of a nation, of children en masse, onboard children, infants, just a few hours being in this world. Something, there's nothing to compare even. There were wars, people were killing for a cause, for a reason. Just being a Jew, I mean, what makes them so different? Because we are cultured, we are educated. I believe this makes us a better human beings than anybody else. If the Polacks will have more education, they will understand that life is more than to kill or give out or sell a Jew for a slice of salami or a pound of sugar. They didn't need this because they were better off any time than the Jewish population by the Germans. And what I let me finish this. I have to bring this point. There were 2 surviving children. I'm going back. I just recall a child of 9 and a child of 10 and a half from my aunts, my first cousin, 2 little beautiful girls. The parents were taken away in a raid by the Germans, shipped off to camp. Matter of fact, I met the mother in Auschwitz, which she survived only 2 or 3 months. That was the end of it. And the Polacks discovered those children wandering in the streets. They were in hidings, you know, in their own business, in hiding. But those children were left without parents. What could they do? They didn't have any food, anything out. They walked out. They thought maybe somebody will give them something. The Polacks grabbed them and brought them to a river, which we had bordering on our town. I don't know, probably there was close by, and they drowned them, pushed them to the water. They turned their arms around. You see, and I am living with this, knowing about this, being told by somebody I cannot recall, but they are the true events, what happened. So, why? You question yourself. And not to keep this wrapped up in me. In a few years, even now, you have people, they will tell you, Holocaust never happened. This is a stories that people invented. How can you invent story like this, having people walking around like me? Who can tell me there was no crematorium? Who can tell me there was no Auschwitz, no selection, no gas chambers when I saw it, when I experienced it? So, and I believe you come to a certain age that you feel you have certain obligation to your children and to your people to make a statement, a testimony, and to identify yourself with those events, that it really happened.